August 13th, 2013. More horse meat. A lightning storm came through last night just after dark. I laid in the blackness of my bivvy, wide-eyed, listening to the soothing pattern of gentle rain, mixed with the terrifying booms of electric bolts so close they sizzled. When I emerged after the storm, the sky was clear and beautiful. I saw a few bright shooting stars before falling asleep. Throughout the night, I was startled awake by horses walking by, and when they woke me up at dawn, I got up to leave. I biked into a grassy plain big enough that the mountains nearly disappeared over the horizon. A Mongolian man wearing a purple coat and a fisherman's hat was there on his motorcycle. He's looking for his animals. I watched him open a small case to reveal a fine pair of binoculars, and bringing them to his eyes, he scanned the horizon. In the rolling hills behind me, no one needed binoculars because the animals were easy to spot on the hillsides. But in the expansive plain, seeing a lost herd in the distance was a real challenge. I got a picture of the man sitting on his motorcycle, wearing his purple robe, the flat land extending far behind him. I carried on slowly, trying to avoid mud puddles and sand. I made progress through the morning until my stomach began to hurt. My pace dragged from the discomfort, and eventually I stopped to sleep, hoping the pain would pass. The temperature hovered in the mid-90s, and nothing in sight offered any shade. Without even a stand to use, I simply laid my bike over on the ground and put my face in the shadow of the pannier. Sometime later, I woke up dripping with sweat and feeling better. I pulled into a very small town called Bayangol. A large round man in an old Russian truck stopped to talk to me. His shirt read, "Mongolia says meat is for man, grass is for animals. There seems to be a strong anti-vegetable movement here." He didn't speak English, so I got out my map to show him what I was doing. He looked astounded, then offered to drive me to his yurt for food. I asked him what direction, and he pointed close enough to the way I was going. I loaded my bike into his truck bed and climbed aboard. The town's police officer also joined us. A thin young man from Ulaanbaatar. He was hitchhiking home for the weekend to be with his wife and child. This rural post is his assignment as a freshman officer. He knew how to say in very clear English the one phrase he was taught at the police academy. "Hello, how may I help you?" He repeated the word several times and laughed. That was the only English he knew. We drove around town for the next 40 minutes. First to the police officer's house so he could change. Then 2 children climbed in for a 20-second ride to the neighbors. We stopped at a birthday party, and the hospital too. There was a spring in the center of town, nothing more than a pipe jutting out of the ground with a faucet on the end. I assume the spring is the reason the town exists at all. The man used a short hose to fill 2 barrels in the back of the truck. I followed along as the policeman and driver took off their shirts, then rinsed themselves under the cold water. When I peeled off my shirt, they pointed at my chest hair and laughed. I've never thought of myself as a particularly hairy guy, but seeing the bald chests of the other men, I guess I am in this part of the world. They also laughed at my polka dot tan from all the holes in my shirt. The last thing we did before leaving town was to pick up 2 little girls and 2 more neighbors. The truck was big, but 7 of us stuffed on the bench seat was a lot. One of the little girls sat on the seat between my legs. She fell asleep, and I held her upright so her face wouldn't smack against the dashboard as we bounced over the uneven road. We stopped to drop off the neighbors and went inside to have a cup of fermented horse milk, or Mongolian Coca-Cola, as the policeman joked. I walked into the yurt to find a big fat man sitting in the back, facing the door, and smoking a joint. We sat down on the ground, and he passed what he was smoking to me. I wasn't sure what was in the joint, and with the policeman along, I felt obliged to be on my best behavior. I declined, but the policeman and driver both took long drags. The truck driver who picked me up was a big guy too, funny and animated. When we arrived at his yurt, he cheerfully invited me inside. I'd hardly sat down before he handed me a cup of what he called Mongolia coffee, which seemed to be just plain horse milk. He also offered me a large metal bowl half filled with oily horse meat. I wondered how long the meat had been sitting in the hot yurt. but I decided I was more hungry than concerned and picked out a big piece to eat. There were 4 long-legged horses lashed to the post outside. Their height and the fact that they were tied up caught my attention. On the altar in the back of the driver's yurt was a shelf of trophies and medals. He'd won them from horse breeding, and specifically racing horses. I thought about the horse I was chewing on and wondered how the last race went for him. Before leaving, I spent a half hour filtering water from the barrel in the back of the truck. The driver's children were there, 2 girls and 2 boys, all under 10. They watched me with a sort of tired fascination. For being so young, I was surprised by how still and patient they were. From the height of the truck, I looked around at the empty landscape and saw very little to stimulate a child. I wondered if they had ever even seen a tree. After thanking the man and waving goodbye to his children, I bicycled another hour into the evening before pulling over to set up camp behind a small hill. I'm on the ground tonight, among tiny wildflowers and clumps of stiff grass. I just finished my dinner of rice and dry bread. A gentle, pink sunset is swirling across the edge of the sky.